These developer skill sprints are quick, 20 minutes presentation max, 10 minutes Q&A or more to learn a tip, trick, or a technology that's in our products. Live Q&A at the end. Download the, if you don't have a license already for XC6, get the free trial license. And the schedule I showed you earlier, it's on that landing page. So if you're building multi-device applications, there's many ways to do it. Some of you might only be doing client server, so you've got a desktop talking to a SQL database backend maybe, or a local database. Maybe you're building multi-tier, so you might have data snap in the middle or some web service of some kind that may then talk to some stuff in the back end in your enterprise infrastructure or whatever. But you can then have multiple client devices that talk to those things. Maybe you're rolling your own TCP, HTTP, and so on. There's a new emerging class of providers, which are these backend as a service providers. Some of them are providing just operating system platforms, but others provide storage, for example, NoSQL storage, SQL storage. I'm thinking Amazon, Microsoft Azure, and things of that kind. There's another category that has grown up, especially for people who are building mobile applications, is backend as a service providers like Parse, like Kinvey, where they provide object storage, user management, push notification server. Of course, we know you can build your own push notification server if you want to, put it on a machine, but then you have to host the machine. Here, they provide the whole cloud infrastructure. You just get an account on one of them and then use our components to talk to their APIs. So our components use the REST API, and there are a component set that are common for the backend providers. We also have a custom provider. So if you want to integrate with some other backend as a service that has a REST API, you can create your own provider as well. And again, these components let you connect, fire off push notifications, do data and object storage in the cloud, and retrieve objects, do user authentication, and all of that. Both Parse and Kinvey, it turns out, use MongoDB. So under the covers, there's a NoSQL database that is being used, but of course you see an API for create this object, store this object, update the key value pairs of an object, delete an object, and so on. And we've got blogs and videos all about all of that. At the same time, we give you the components. They're in the BaaS area of the component palette. There's two providers, T-Parse provider, T-Kinvey provider. And then there's a set of they're all non-visual components, so they can be used on all the platforms we have compilers for. And there they are for storage, for querying storage, for doing a backend push, which is what we're going to show today, to push a notification and have it appear on the devices. For mobile, T-Push events, drop a T-Push event in a mobile app, and it can retrieve push events that come once it registers itself with the backend service. Those are the components. To do a backend push from a desktop application for Kinvey, you need to create a custom endpoint, and the custom endpoint will take the data that you send to Kinvey from a backend push, and you can provide some JavaScript up there that that lets it take the columns or fields that you send and create the broadcast payload for iOS and Android for the push notification that comes down to your device. And Serena DuPont has an April 17th blog post with an example, which I stole. There's the source code, and I stole the bitmap that is over here on the screen. Now, if you are, let's see, where did I put, oh, I don't know where I put that. Okay. If you want to know more about Backend as a Service, I did a RAD in Action. I'll get that link up later. I did a RAD in Action webinar a little while ago on Backend as a Service, where I went through Parse and Kinvey and all of the most of the components that are part of the BaaS component set. So if you're new to all this Backend as a Service, you can go and look at the videos and watch the replay and look at the links that are there. This is just one part or aspect of that. Okay. Enough talking. Let's go to demonstration. So let's go to the IDE. And what I want to show is a couple things. Oh, I do need, where did I close that browser? That's really bad. Okay, so let's put RAD in Action. There it is, RAD in Action BaaS. So there's the RAD in Action --/BaaS. Let me Kinvey. Okay, because I need to log in. just so I can show you a couple things. Sorry, oh, I was already logged in. Okay, so a couple things here. Here's my there's that custom endpoint. It's called desktop push, and here's some JavaScript code that takes what is sent from the back end, which is my desktop app, and then creates the payload and then pushes that payload down to the devices. For push, I've got a couple things. I'm using this development app, which gives me an app key from Kinvey, so I name it and create one. It has a configuration where I set up my iOS credentials and my global cloud message, Google Cloud Messaging. You get to those things by going to consoledevelopersgoogle.com, and here I've got my Android push. And if I look at the APIs that GCM project ID is associated with, you'll see that I've turned on Google Cloud Messaging for Android as one of the APIs that I'm going to use. It's off by default. You just go down here, and here's a whole bunch of other APIs as well. You just turn them on, and then if you use that project key, then your app can do all of these kinds of things with Google Cloud APIs. And then for developers at Apple, I go to, let's see, I think that's developer@apple.com. and the Member Center, and let me log in. And in here, I've got some certificates, and one of them is my provisioning profile, which is my push notification test, which is active. And down here, it's, let's see, okay. All right, it's this one, David I push. And if I scroll down, notice I've got push notification turned on. I haven't done a distribution or release build yet, so that one is configurable. I could click edit and get a provisioning profile for distribution as well. But for development, I need that part turned on. All right, back to the IDE. This is a sample mobile application that will take the Kinvey provider, and I'll set up things like the app key and the secret and all of that. I do that with an INI file. So I read an INI file to load up all the different properties to have the Kinvey provider be set up, and then I set push events to active that other component. That's the second component, which is push events. And push events has a couple other properties: auto activate and auto register device. I want to control the activation because I need to set up the Kinvey provider fields first. Push events talks through the provider. If I wanted to hard code in these things at design time, then I could auto activate the push events. Now, push events has 4 events that I care about: on device registered, on token received, on token request failed, and on push received. Let's just look at the push received. Push received, if it's an iPhone target or iOS target, it's going to just display whatever the push notification has for the message and for the badge number. And ultimately, the badge number will show up on a little icon on the iOS desktop. For Android, I'm going to display the title and display the message that is sent once I get that push notification. You'll see that in the user interface where I just use a memo area down here. This is where stuff is going to show up. All right, so that's my mobile app. And I've got a Pascal version and a C++ version that I will zip up and have a link from my blog, and also from the Skill Sprint area. We'll make sure you can get it. Then I want to do then I want to show you how do we do a backend push. Oh, it's up here. We use the Kinvey provider again, and I have a form create event that loads up those properties. And now I'm using the backend push component. And here on the Kinvey provider, I have the push endpoint, which was called desktop push, which was right over here in custom endpoints. It was called desktop push. So I've set that property, the push endpoint. And then backend push has a couple properties. One, if I'm going to an Apple push service, then I can set the alert, I can set a badge number, and I can set a sound file. If I want my own custom notification sound, I can deploy with my app a custom sound file that's documented on the Apple side. And you just put the file name in here, and if it finds it, it'll play that sound, up to 30 seconds of notification sound. Otherwise, it'll use a whatever standard system notification sound if you turn that on for your app. For GCM or Google Cloud Messaging, there's 4 different strings you can pass along as part of the payload. I'm going to use the title and MSG fields. There's also some additional stuff you can add, which is called the extras. I don't know what else, the extras. And those are name value pairs that get added to the payload as well. And you can put whatever you want into these. You can add more of them. Just keep clicking on that add button. And then you can go in and edit them in the object inspector. So that just might be the URL. And then the value I put here is www.embarcadero.com, for example. Right? And then that would be in the extras. And you can get at the extras. Let's see if I go back to my Pascal version of that's the C++ version. Let's go to the object Pascal. Here it is up here. It's this one. So the way to get the extras is when you receive the push event in your mobile app, you get sent this push data object. And from the push data, if it's iOS, I use adata.aps.alert because that's what I used on my backend push. And then the badge shows up here in memo lines. Here's the GCM title, GCM message. And then I have a for loops going through adata, getting the extras field out of it. It has a count field that I can use. So I'm going to loop through the number of extras that there are, and I'll just dump out the key value pairs. Because this app is just echoing what's sent versus maybe pulling that URL and loading it in to the T-Web browser, doing a parameter and doing a navigate method call to navigate when you get the push notification to like, hey, I'm here, find me, or whatever your app is trying to do. So you can use these extras as well. So the backend push, I've just got an edit box, 3 edit boxes, and a spin button. This is a VCL version. A spin button, and then down here I simply set the text into the APS alert, convert the spin edit value to a string and put that in the badge, take the GCM title edit, put that in the title, GCM backend push, take the MSG, no MSG, monosodium glutamate, take the text, put that in the MS, and here's all the action, call push on the backend push, and all the magic happens. So let me do this. I'm going to run this app, but I'm going to shrink exit full screen mode. That way I can do a couple things. Let's put this here, and let's bring up this listener that I have for my Android tablet, which is there. And then I'm going to bring up my iOS device. So here's my iPhone that's sitting here, and I'm using AirPlay with this reflector software to do it. So let's run the backend push, and let's go back again and see hold on, get that. There it is up there. Let's try to fit all this in somehow. Let's move that. There we go. Okay. So here's my VCL app running on Windows. Let's put in the hello iOS device friends. Let's bump the badge number up a little bit. And let's 7, 6, okay. And here's the GCM title. So cool title, and hello Android device friends. All right, and then we're going to click the button, and we'll see the magic happen. So there's the iOS. So I'll push on that, and in this case, the app was not running. So but the device had been registered, so the app gets started by iOS, and then there's the hello iOS friends text that's there. And over on my Android device, I've got my cool title. That app wasn't running in memory, so it'll get started, and then hello Android device friends. Now, if the app is loaded, let's just put a 2 here and hit this. Then I get it right inside the application directly. And that's code that's in my, that is in the the on-form activate. And so on-form activate, if the app isn't running but it's activated by the operating system, then I'll have a startup notification. If that's non-null, then I'll just push out the string. Let's go, just wait a minute. It's doing some code insight stuff in the background. So I'll just output into the memo the APS alert or the GCM and the GCM message if it's Android. So using this, when it gets activated, if push events has a startup notification because it started up the app. So that's how you can think about in your mobile apps when you want to get push notifications. There's sort of three states of a mobile app. There's it's running and it's on the top. It's running, but it's kind of in the background. So let's close both of those. But they're still running. I haven't kicked them out of memory, right? And let's bring this, let's go and load the FireMonkey version. OPFMX, this is a FireMonkey version. So let's run that one. See how I'm going to make all this fit on the screen. Okay, so that's the same app, but a FireMonkey version that could run on Windows or OS X desktop. And let's go back here really quick and bring back up this guy, and then go back to, okay, here we go. So in this case, the app is running in the background, right? If I double click, then you see it's there, right? I haven't kicked it out of memory. And if I go over here on Android, right, the app is sitting down there. It's in memory and it's sort of in the background. So now this is iOS again, and this one I'm using a spin box. That's what FireMonkey has. So title 2, and let's go down to the MSG, monosodium glutamate, and let's say Android again. So now if I say push to iOS and Android, the apps are in the background. Now it comes to the front, and it's there, and it has the rest of the stuff. And here's title 2, and it comes to the front, and it has all the stuff. So it's running in memory. So the three states: app not running, but you've registered the device for push; app running, and on the desktop it comes in; app running, but sort of in the background, hasn't been kicked out. It goes there as well. So that's how easy it is to do back-end push. The big and more convoluted parts are setting up all the infrastructure on Apple and on Google for push notifications and getting certificates and these things. All of that I cover in videos in my RAD in Action webinar, so you can watch those. And I have a link here. Let's see if I go back to my slides. Okay, and let's zoom this back up. And, oh, sorry, one pass. So I have a video here, and I'll post those links on my blog. It's a subset of the whole BaaS webinar I did a few weeks back. Android push notification, Object Pascal and C++ on YouTube. RAD in Action BaaS, that's that on demand. Here's this. I also did a session at C++ Mobile Day on C++. Serena has combined a whole bunch of her blog posts about backends as a service with links. So go to her June 9th, blogs.embarcadero.com, Serena DuPont, June 9, and you can go step through each one of those. She builds up and extends a to-do list example with users and authentication and all of that. And that's based on the sample that we ship, and then she's been extending it. There's a tutorial in the doc wiki for using remote notifications for iOS and Android that steps you through setting everything up and then building the app that mobile app that receives the push. There's samples in the mobile samples for both Object Pascal and C++. Go to the Cloud BaaS, Backend as a Service subdirectory. Those are also available on SourceForge. All of our demos are on SourceForge, always updated there. And then if you want to check out the pricing and facilities and capabilities for Parse and Kinvey, just go to their websites, because people usually ask me how much does it cost and that kind of stuff, and I don't know. I haven't been charged yet because I've been doing demos. I haven't built an app that 1 million people are using, maybe someday with advertisements and in-app purchases. But they have all the schedule and pricing and how much storage you use and how many notifications you push and so on. All of that is on their site, so you can check it out. And again, download the free trial if you don't have XZ6 or you don't have XZ6 Enterprise Edition and above, and you can play with all this stuff. The next skill sprint is next Tuesday, June 24th. It's with Serena DuPont. Manage user accounts and storage with Parse Backend as a service, but everything she shows you for Parse will also work with Kinvey, so you can ask her questions more about the work that she's doing in her demos and tutorials on users and storage of objects again. And it's MongoDB in the background, but it just looks like objects to you as far as using the components are concerned. Okay.
So here's a question. Can you do a push notification to a specific device or a specific user's devices?
You can. There's queries. There's query strings, and there's queries on the Kinvey and Parse side where you can set up groups, or you can query a certain individual by having tags in user accounts to just go to their user. So yeah, you can send a customized push to each users that are created on the system you choose, if you want to. And there's the query lines to be able to query out which users you want, or based on some tag. Maybe you have tag for adults versus teenagers versus kids, things of that kind. And Jim, I think I'm hearing your keyboard again, probably.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway.
Let me see if I can crank that down.
I'll try to not talk while you're typing, just so in the replay of the Q&A, but I'll edit this stuff out too. Jim does a great job. Jim's doing more skill sprints as well coming up, so it's really cool. He's going to be at the Philly Hacker Fair. What's it called this weekend?
The Philly Code Camp Refactored.
Philly Code Camp Refactored this weekend. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, go see App Method and all this cool mobile multi-device stuff at the Philly Code Camp.
Yep. How does the badge get reset after a user has viewed it? Can that be done from within the app?
You can change the badge. Yeah, there's an interface. We have a notification component. So you can have a notification component, and one of the properties is badge. There's also a helper function, FMX helpers for iOS, where you can set the badge number to any value you want as well.
So you showed VCL. Does this work with FireMonkey as well?
Yeah, it works with FireMonkey. Those are non-visual controls. I could have just as easily said FireMonkey Windows, FireMonkey Mac OS X, and built those apps. Again, they're non-visual controls, and they work. If you hover over them, it tells you all the platforms. Win32, Win64. You can even do a back-end push from a mobile device. So any of the devices that are supported in our compilers for Delphi and C++, you can use all the components. Push events only are iOS and Android. We're not supporting push events yet for Windows or for OS X.
Does the backend push event system work with Parse as well?
Backend push works with Parse. The only thing that doesn't work with Parse right now is push notification on Android. So I guess push, that means backend. If you backend push via Parse to an Android device, you'd have to do some coding on your own. But R&D is working on supporting Parse push notifications for Android, and look for that in the near future. So for now, if you need both devices and you need push, use Kinvey, or write a little bit of additional code on Android for Parse.
Can a Windows app send push notifications to the cloud and then have the cloud push to all the devices that are registered?
And the answer is yes.
How do I get an ID number for my Android application?
You go to your Google console, log in with your Gmail account, and you get an Android, and you say create an app ID. I cover all of that in the webinar that I did for the RAD in Action. I show you stepping through GCM, creating the app ID for Android, and I show you creating a provisioning profile with push for iOS.
Is there a BaaS component to work with Windows Azure mobile services?
Not currently.
The BaaS framework is extensible, though, so someone could make one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a custom provider, I think it's custom provider might be the base class, and then you could create your own, or somebody could, or maybe we will. Who knows?
It seems like I
Somebody
heard
asked in the webinar that we did the other time, could they create their own custom notification server and then create their own provider? And the answer is yes. Anders Olsen and I think one of our MVPs last year did a custom push notification server for iOS, and Anders showed how to go through the Apple API back in mobile. What was it? Mobile Code Rage Mobile for Object Pascal Delphi last June. Showed how to use a custom push notification server and add custom push client side. So you could create your own push notification server and still use these components. Go through a REST interface. They're built on top of the REST API, but again, you could build your own server and push client side if you want to. And then there was a comment or question, maybe off topic, about storage and how to insert into storage, and you can do that. Serena shows that with adding users. So user accounts in Kinvey users are just storage objects themselves with some, a username and password, but they can have address and country and interests and whatever. You can create as many columns as you want. And she shows how to add users into storage, but you can also add items into a storage. But I think he was using backend query. Query is to pull from the backend storage service. But Serena will be covering some of that next Tuesday, and has been showing how to do a full to-do list. And we have an example that ships, which is a to-do list, which uses BaaS storage and lets you insert items in your to-do list, and that ships with the product. So you can take a look at the code that you write for editing, deleting, and inserting into object storage for Kinvey and Parse. That's the sample that ships, one of the samples that ships in the Cloud BaaS samples folder.
So there's more questions about specific users, and that's just done through query, right?
You can query users. Well, you could query user. The user account is just an object storage itself, but there's a specific interface for managing users. But ultimately, it's a storage class, and you can use the query or the file operation to get at the storage class, including users. I showed that in my RAD in Action webinar. It wasn't a part of push notification from a Windows app here, but I show iterating through the to-do list storage, but I could just as easily iterate it through the user storage. They're all just stuck in MongoDB, and they're all just, they use the term either object or class name, so you grab the user class name and iterate through it.
How is Google push notifications service related to Kinvey?
You can choose to use Google's push notification service if you want to. It's a different API. We don't have a provider for Google, but you could use it. There's an API for it, and you could write the code. Kinvey and Parse provide their own interface across languages, including REST API, which we use with our components, that leverage the Google Cloud Messaging and leverage the Apple Push. We don't have a provider for good Google Cloud Messaging service. We use the Google Cloud Messaging APIs because that's what Kinvey and Parse need.
Yeah, so if you're using the Google Cloud Messaging directly, you have to have your own server set up. And so the reason you use Kinvey is they manage that server for you. And so they're still using Google Cloud Messaging, if I understand correctly. And then you send your message to Kinvey, and then they tell Google Cloud Messaging to send the message to the device. So what's the difference between Kinvey and Parse?
They're two services that provide similar capabilities. I haven't seen I've seen some web-based side-by-side comparisons, but I haven't done an in-depth side-by-side comparison. They provide many of the same capabilities: push server, object storage, user management, file storage management. So they're very similar in that respect. You should look at them and see which maybe has a certain capability you might care about. maybe the filtering, or how they do relations between object storage, although they're both using MongoDB on the back end.
Now, are they both free, or at what point do they not become free, or how does that work?
You have to go to their sites. They're free for a certain amount of storage and a certain amount of push notifications. Parse recently at the Facebook Developer Conference announced even more freeness, unless you're sending billions of push notifications or something. So you really need to go to parse.com and Kinvey.com. They have free levels, like when I'm developing here, and then they scale up. So you'll have to look at their pricing and make your decision if one suits your needs better than the other. I guess it depends. If you're building the next Candy Crush and you have that many users and you want to push notices to them, maybe, but you're probably making money, so you can probably afford either of these services, or maybe to build your own.
Yeah, generally it's enough that you can get started until you're making money. Now, you'd mentioned that there are other providers coming, but now we only have Parse and Kinvey, right?
We only have Parse and Kinvey and the base class that they inherit from, so the custom provider. Again, you can explore that and build your own. You could do that. Again, our components are built on top of REST-based APIs, but again, once you write your own code, if you want to do that. But again, as I said, it's not for me to announce other ones. It's for them to announce. We're doing some work ourselves, but some other providers of backend as a service systems are also looking to build a custom provider that would hook into the other components that we have. When they're ready and they let us, we will have a skill sprint, and we will tell you all about it through blogs and emails and other ways too. So stay tuned. By the other way is, if you have a backend as a service provider that you like, send us an email or tell them how come they don't have a provider for Delphi and C++ Builder. Robert asked, can exe5 and exe6 coexist? Yes. exe5 and exe6, I've got them running on 3 of my notebooks. There is an issue, some collisions running app method 114 and exe6 update 1, and that's documented. They both share the same subdirectories. They're both directories 14.0, and there's some things you have to think about if you want to try to run those. I don't. I run them on separate machines, method and exe6. Really for 2 different audiences, people getting started, new, versus people who have our products and want to continue using Red Studio for all the things. Think of Red Studio as a superset because it has the BCL and other capabilities, DB Express and so on. That method only has FireTAC. It doesn't have DB Express, doesn't have BDE, doesn't have all of that stuff. So
you want to bring up the skill sprint schedule? We got a question about some upcoming sessions here.
Let me go back to this computer over here, over on this one. So where I have it also. Oh, where's my browser? There's my browser. Okay. Here we go. No, that's not it, David. Skill sprint. I had it on the other machine, but that's all right. It's World Cup time. Developer. Skill sprint landing page. Okay, and then scroll down a little. The other thing to note is I've been editing the different presentations and the live Q&A from the other sessions, and we're uploading those to YouTube, and so the links are starting to appear. If you hover over these, you'll see YouTube there. So I'm going to catch up this week on the REST API data snap I did on Tuesday, and this one I'm doing today. I'll get those uploaded by tomorrow. There's a playlist. If you go to the Embarcadero TechNet page on YouTube, there's a developer skill sprints playlist that'll have all of them, continuing to add to them. Or you can wait until this page gets updated with additional links. And the rest of the schedule.
In July, we have a session on using Android and iOS APIs directly, right? There it is right there, 3rd and 8th. Integrate more iOS with Objective-C.
Yeah, on July 3rd and July 8th.
Is there a video to show that the same projects get compiled and deployed onto Win, Mac, and Android? Thanks.
We have lots of those. On the Start Here page, I do a Hello World kind of example, and I show it running on all 4 target platforms. So if you have the IDE, go to the welcome page. If you've turned it off, go to the start here page. And Jim has done a video, and I did a video on the configuration where I also build an app that runs on all 4 platforms. So the difference for desktop and mobile is that I always start mobile first, so I create a mobile project, which gets me to iOS and Android and can do Win32 and simulator for Delphi. And then I add a desktop FireMonkey project into my project group, and then I delete the unit that was generated by the file new project wizard, and I add the unit that is the unit that I use in my mobile application to my desktop FireMonkey project. And then I just hit run on all 4 platforms. You may have to do some ifdef. You saw me do some ifdef code here because I wanted to have some code specifically for Android because of the GCM sub properties. I could put them in even if I was building an iOS app, but I just thought, what the heck? The iOS app would just ignore them. And then Clive's asking if can I put the slide deck up as well with all the links. Yes, I will zip up the slide. Oh, there goes your mute and harbor again, Jim. But I will zip up the slides. It's probably this weekend, and I'll clean up a couple things in the app. So I won't give you my INI files with my keys, but I'll give you blank ones that have the right name equals, so that you can then, once you get your app keys and so on, put them in the INI file. So I'll zip all of that up, including this little FireMonkey desktop for Windows and OS 10 that I did. So you can do VCL or FireMonkey desktop backend push, as well as storage. You might want to use storage in a cloud, object storage in the cloud. Everything that's that non-visual. The only thing we don't support currently for Windows and OS 10 is we don't support push notifications. We know that that happens. You get notifications for in Windows, and OS 10 has a notification system. So think that some of that kind of stuff will, think about for the future for us to give you. But for now, push notifications are for mobile apps, for iOS and Android. We support Kinvey on iOS and Android. For Parse, we support iOS currently, not Android yet. But there's some programming magic you could do. But we'll get that in the future as well. And there's also some other backend as a service providers who are working on their own custom providers, and we'll keep you posted as some of those show up in the future. Let's see. Oh, Brad's thanking me for 29 years. He's from a user since 87. Yeah, no, Brad, 87. Yeah, see, that's probably Turbo Pascal 4. Yeah, and Turbo Pascal for the Mac probably was around that time. Turbo Pascal 5 was a little later, and 5.5 with objects was that other thing. But this is all fun stuff. I get to play with all these cool tools. Jim and I have Google Glass. We've got drones. Jim's got all sorts of other cool stuff. I've got Philips Hue lights and quick-set door locks. So it's keeping us all on our toes to play with all these new devices and gadgets. Jim's got what is it? Chromecast. Is that one? Right?
Chromecast. We're working on that one.
Yeah.
And the Fire TV, Amazon's new Fire TV box, set-top box that works great with from Delphi.
Yeah.
From Ride Studio.
Yep. And I guess the next thing was it today or yesterday? I've lost track. A new phone from Amazon as well.
I can't wait to get a hold of one of those. That looks pretty cool.
So let's see. Robert is asking about iOS support. We are working on OS 10 Yosemite and iOS 8 support. Exe 6 will not have it currently because iOS 8 and OS 10 Yosemite are not shipping yet. And if you're
that
beta
being
testing,
said,
don't talk about it. And if we're beta testing, we won't talk about it.
Yep. You should be able to build an app today and have it run on iOS 8.
Yep. But again, we'll be very timely. I think we were same day or next day to have the iOS 7 styles, and I think the only thing, and then another couple days, and we had full 7. And then 7.1, there were some changes. It took us about a week to get the simulator changes working for iOS Simulator for Delphi, but we've been very timely on that. We were timely. We were ahead of Microsoft Visual Studio on Touch in Windows 7. We're a little behind on Windows 8, but all your apps can still work for VCL and FireMonkey on Windows 8. I'm running Windows 8. and then there's more to come. And then on our roadmap, we have Linux Server listed and WinRT, which would get us to WinRT ARM, which would get us to those kind of devices in the future. That's out there. You can look at the public roadmap, which came out in March and was updated in April when we shipped XZ6. So the teams are hot and heavy on all 4 platforms, as well as some additional platforms that we're looking at for the future as the roadmap talks about it. So stay tuned that way. I did my skill sprint demos, and it worked, including the FireMonkey one. Well,
how did the part where you were showing the JavaScript? How does that fit into the whole thing?
So for Kinvey, in order to take the desktop push or the backend push parameters, the extras and the alert and message, whether it's iOS and Android, that needs to be put into the correct payload format for the push that gets sent. If I use the Kinvey web console, I can just type all that stuff in, including some JSON stuff, and it gets pushed down from from their server to my device. From a backend application, they need a way to convert what we pass them through the REST API that they provide to put that into the push notification. It's called the payload, or the message that gets sent down to the device, and that's what that custom endpoint is. Parse, you don't need to do that. You just call and pass parameters, and it does it under the covers. That's it. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, JT. Thank you, Stephen.